Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, cha, bonjour, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hey, my name is Jed Lee, and you are tuned in to Reading with Your Kids. We are coming to you from Reedville, the loveliest neighborhood in all of Boston. Our mission is to help all families grow closer through reading. And we do that by introducing you to the coolest authors, the funniest tales, and a whole lot of reading inspiration for your whole family. We are hoping that you will want to spread the word and the love about reading with your kids by telling all of your family and friends, your kids' teachers, librarians, principals, and random strangers you meet on the street all about the show and letting them know that they can hear us on the WREB AM/FM 24/7 radio network, and they can find us on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Good Pods, Podcast Addict, YouTube. Wherever you find your favorite shows, you can find Reading with Your Kids. We have some really wonderful guests for you today. First up is Dr. Artika Tyner. She is here to celebrate Amazing Africa A to Z. And as you hear in a conversation with Dr. Artika, she attributes a lot of her success as an author and in life to Justice Alan Page. Justice Alan and his daughter Kamie were on the podcast back in February, but we just discovered that there was some kind of technical glitch, and the folks who find us on the podcasting platforms, all they heard was the introduction to the show. They weren't able to hear the whole episode, so we are playing it back for you today. It's going to be a blast. You're going to love it. We want to let you know that this episode of Reading with Your Kids is brought to you by Zevo Life. Zevo Life. Parents, do you ever wish you had a little bit more zip in your step when you're reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar for the 5th or the 50th time today? Well, say hello to Zevo Life, your new best friend in daily wellness. Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient-dense whole plant, loaded with 50% plant protein and essential amino acids, fiber, antioxidants, and so much more. It's a powerhouse in just 1 teaspoon a day. And yes, it's giving people more energy, better health, and even healthier skin and hair. I could use some healthier hair. If you want to feel more energized, focused, and vibrant during your next animated storytime performance, Zevo Life might just be your secret weapon. Visit Zevo.life, that's ZIVO.life, and use the promo code READ to get 30% off your order. With a 30-day risk-free guarantee, you've got nothing to lose except the sluggishness. Zevo Life, the better microalgae. Fuel your day. Read like a rock star. Joining me right now from St. Paul in the great state of Minnesota, our guest is here today to celebrate her new picture book. Is called Amazing Africa A to Z. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Artika Tyner. Dr. Artika, how are you?
I'm wonderful. Honored to be here with you today.
So happy to have you on. First off, I have to say, your choice in eyewear is phenomenal. I have the same pair of glasses, but it's up in my other studio. So you just look fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I love glasses. I worked for an optometrist when I was in college and in law school, so they're my fun accessory.
Let's talk about Amazing Africa, A to Z. One of the things in your notes, you talked about, this is a great way for kids and adults to learn about this fascinating continent. And I'm so happy that you, right off the bat, recognize that Africa is a continent and not a country. Because I think so many people just think it's one big thing, Africa. It just describes everything from north to south, east to west.
Yes, it's important to start off with both education, raising awareness and knowledge. If we're not careful as human beings, we just write our own narrative, whether it's just based upon lack of information, our own biases. But my life changed as I started to travel throughout the continent and seeing the uniqueness of each of the 54 countries related to the culture, language, landscape. All those pieces were a part of my inspiration for writing the book.
Yeah. So tell us, how does the book go? Do we follow one or two characters as they travel around Africa?
Well, in fact, you follow a narrative that takes you A to Z. Of course, all the letters of the alphabet are not enough to describe the beauty of Mama Africa, but we decided to give it a try because our hope is that once people start to read the book, Amazing Africa A to Z, they'll get interested in some of the other books that feature a character like Akuya or Kofi or Kojo, who also live in West Africa and tell their stories through our book series, Leaders or Readers. So we wanted to first get people interested. I was surprised at the number of people who thought Africa was just one big country instead of a continent with 54 countries. I was surprised that people only saw Africa as a place of hunger and disparities, but instead of seeing the glorious nature of Africa, that Africa is the beginning of civilization, the beginning of the earth. So seeing the beauty of not only Mother Nature, but the beauty of the people. I haven't seen the level of hospitality that I witness every time I step my foot on the continent of Africa.
That's beautiful. I had the unique pleasure last year of attending the International Children's Book Festival in Bologna, Italy with my beautiful wife. And it just a stroke of luck. I learned that the Italian government was sponsoring an exhibit featuring authors and publishers from all around Africa at the event. And they just happened to be staying in the hotel that we were staying at. And we got to know amazing authors and publishers throughout the continent. Had some wonderful conversations with them that we shared here on the podcast, and it is just it's such a diverse place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What parts of the continent have you traveled to?
I traveled to Tanzania,
mm-hmm.
to Sierra Leone. I've traveled to Ghana over 30 times. Ghana has become my second home. And I've traveled multiple times to South Africa. So far, I've gone west and east and south. And I still would like to visit north. I have a dear friend who teaches and lectures in Morocco. So I feel she deserves a visit real soon.
Yeah, yeah. Jedley starts with a J. What part of Africa that starts with a J will we learn in Amazing Africa A to Z?
Well, one of the things that we can learn about J in particular related to the highlight of my experience is always related to food. So I'll tell you about food first, and then I'll tell you about a beautiful city that I love. First of all, J also stands for Jollof rice. If you're in West Africa, that's a fierce competition of who makes the best Jollof rice. But yours truly, I'm willing to try them all. Jollof is not only a side dish, it can be the full entree. Because in Liberia, they mix it with different meats from smoked fish to roasted beef and roasted chicken. But also in other countries, they focus more on the vegetable base, and it's the perfect side. But if you're thinking about J, highly recommend visiting Johannesburg, also known as Joburg in South Africa, to see the beauty of culture and history all come together in a miraculous way. I can't help but to say South Africa is a must visit. I was there just about 6 months ago mm-hmm. and had the opportunity to visit the museums, to experience culture, and to build just the connections to such a wonderful group of people across the nation, across South Africa. And then also it was a special visit because I had a chance to go to Robben's Island to also see where Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for those many years and to really see his tenacity and strength despite the conditions that he was in, that the human spirit could not be diminished. He still rose with grace and love for everyone.
I love that. It's what a powerful experience that must have been for you.
It was. As a lawyer, it helped to just connect my own experience, seeing many of my clients face barriers, face injustices while incarcerated. It just reminded me to keep fighting the good fight, faith, to ensure that we honor the human dignity of everyone, no matter the conditions that they're in.
I think that's a super important, the idea that, and a super important idea for us to teach our kids is that the whole thing that we are all deserving of love and respect. And when we see people being treated disrespectfully, without love, without inclusion, we should stand up and say something.
Yes, it's an important lesson. I oftentimes tell people it's reiterated even in Sesame Street. During some of the political and civic unrest over the past few years, especially here in Minnesota, one of the things that was interesting to me was seeing Elmo giving a message, but standing up and speaking out when we see something wrong, and to also lend that hand to build community in meaningful ways. And that's an invitation for all of us to unveil the leader within. It starts with small things. Oftentimes we're worried about a position or a title, but true leadership is about a sense of agency. How do you impact the room that you're in your classroom for our young people? How do you impact your block and then take impacting your block to then impacting the rest of the street and then to your county and then beyond to your state? So I hope with all the work that we do, with all the books that we focus on, it's truly about inspiring leadership in each and every person to say what is in your hands to make a difference in the world.
Yeah. You continue to say we when you're referring to your books and create. Do you have a team that is working with you, or are you just using that royal we?
For this particular book, Amazing Africa A to Z, I did have a co-author. Her name is Monica Habia. Monica is born and raised in Ghana. She was one of my former students in our public policy and leadership program. So I partnered with her related to this particular book because I wanted to have an authentic story in the sense of what was your experience growing up? What were the things that brought you joy? What did you see? And collectively for both of us to see an expansion of the whole continent beyond both of us. Of course, we have deep roots in Ghana, but to see the entire continent, the beauty of it, and celebrate it with others. So most of our books that we produce through our publishing company, Planting People Growing Justice Leadership Institute, are based upon collaborations. That way we're bringing together multiple authors, different perspectives, different experiences to help create a culmination of a wonderful book.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned, and we spoke about it with a number of the publishers and authors that I met at the International Children's Book Festival, a recurring theme was that Africa and the different cultures in Africa have this rich history of storytelling, but not so much tradition of reading books together. And I was wondering is that something that you also noticed in your journeys?
Yes, I did, because the storytelling is just a natural part of culture. For instance, one of the cultural dishes that I make, a wache or black-eyed peas, is the base of the dish. You're in the kitchen. I mean, preparing some of the meals and the entrees we cook, it takes some time. It's a great opportunity to turn learning into a practical experience. My mother used to teach mathematics. She'd have us count the beans. That's how we learn addition, subtraction, multiplication. But at the same time, we're in the kitchen learning about our ancestors who had gone before us. That's why I know so much about my own personal history and have the resiliency, the determination based upon those heroes and sheroes from my own lineage who have come before me. That's that table talk that happens every time that we're coming together to create a meal or coming together to create conversation. So storytelling, folklore, just that tradition of oral tradition of sharing information is a part of our culture. And yes, the beauty of it is now that you're seeing authors like, for instance, a local author, Dr. Joseph Mbele, that taking that tradition and now writing the books to make sure that if you miss that conversation in the kitchen, if you miss that conversation in the living room, you now can have it available to you in the process and journey of a physical book.
That's yeah. And that's one of the things I wanted to note is that while I absolutely loved the time I spent reading with my kids many decades ago, and you know, how much joy I think it brings to everybody and how many benefits the kids get from it. When we're talking with our kids as we're cooking during family mealtime, those are also very, very important learning times. And, you know, I think it's just natural. If you're reading with your kids, you're probably going to be talking to your kids while you're cooking, and you're probably going to be having family meals together. And it's just a great reminder that all the time that we spend with our kids, if we're engaged with our kids, they're going to learn from it instead of everybody's around the dinner table on their phones.
This is true. My mantra has always been that every opportunity is a learning opportunity. I'm a lifelong educator. I've been an educator for over 20 years now. And every time that I'm in community, every time I'm in the classroom, the best part of what we can do is turn everything into a learning opportunity. Case in point, I was one of the early pioneers around a teaching pedagogy of teaching in the moment, literally using the local newspaper as a part of the training and educational experience for my law students. That way I could see, could they point out legal issues? Did they understand when they were seeing the 14th Amendment in action? And those experiences helped to shape not only the academic experience, but led to those other experiences, seeing students in the hallway, engaging in the type of discourse that challenges people to think critically and ethically. So those learning experiences are everywhere. We just have to maximize them.
Yeah. You know, I'm visiting your website and I see that you have, it looks like over a dozen children's books, possibly 24. And in speaking with you, I know that you're an attorney, you're a teacher. Where do you find the time to write the kids' books?
Oh, that's oftentimes a challenge. Like this past year, I haven't written as many books as I would have liked. I sent my agent my 42nd book, so I'm happy about that. But normally I would have finished a few other manuscripts. So I have, even on my desk here, some pending book projects. So I try to find the time and inspiration wherever I'm at. Literally, I should be the poster child for Post-it notes. I have to say that. That's local Minnesota 3M company. So I have to make sure I highlight our hometown company. But literally, sometimes I remember even writing my dissertation. At one point, I was overwhelmed. So I'm just saying this for anyone that's listening in. You have a book in your heart, you have a dissertation to complete, or just a project in general. One of my friends called me over for dinner and she said, you know, I noticed something's different about you. You don't feel as enthusiastic about your studies. I was like, I don't. There are all these things I want to do. I'm a full-time professor. I have my responsibilities for academic writing. When will I have time to write a dissertation? And she challenged me. She said, could you spare 5 minutes a day? I was like, 5 minutes? I get done my whole lifetime. But what she did for me was liberated me from the pressure of saying, I have to write for this designated amount of time, instead of just taking a post-it note here and there, jot down an idea or come back to it. So I have thousands of post-it notes here in my office. And as time permits, I organize them and bring a storyline together. And also, admittedly, I have a chance to do a lot of writing. That's a long flight between here and Ghana that I take at least 4 to 5 times a year. So that gives me some solitude and some time to really reflect on some of the topics that I'm interested in. So I do a lot of writing on my flights as I'm traveling for lectures and as I'm traveling to Ghana.
Wonderful. What was the inspiration, the initial inspiration to become a children's author?
The inspiration was embodied in my mentor, Justice Allen Page. When I saw his first children's book, it all made sense. You know, you always dream and you say, oh, I'll write the children's book one day. But when I saw Justice Page do it, I was like, maybe that was the inspiration that I needed. And when I saw his impact in the schools and how inspired the young people were when they met him and what it meant to truly have a book that reflected family values, that reflected community values, I wanted to do just that. So I had written a book. It was sitting there. But when I saw him release his first book, I felt the confirmation that now it was the time. So literally, I called the office of the Page Education Foundation, and the rest is history. Justice Page and his team guided me from beginning to a finished publication.
Yeah. We, Dr. Artika and I were talking about Justice Page. He appeared here on Reading with Your Kids back in February of 25. And we released it on Super Bowl day. I thought that was probably too much competition. We'll have to re-release it. But during that interview, all he wanted to talk about was how much he loved being a grandfather. And I love that. I really do love that. And but you were sharing with me all of the things that he has done and all the contributions he's made to the folks in Minnesota and around the country. Can you just, since he didn't want to give himself any flowers, can we give him a little bit of flowers?
I would love to. It would be my greatest honor. I wouldn't be here today without him. In 1999, that was my golden ticket. I got a letter in the mail that let me know that as a first generation student, as a student that clearly didn't have the resources to go to college. I applied, but I never thought it was possible. I got a letter in the mail that said I would receive a scholarship from the Page Education Foundation. And that was a confirmation that I wasn't walking alone to go into college, that I had someone along with me. And that was Justice Page and his wife, Mrs. Diane Page. From 1999 until today, the Page family has been active in my day-to-day work and advocacy around literacy and education. I still volunteer with the Page Education Foundation and help the other scholars. Everything I needed academically to be successful. And let's be clear, 1999, I was graduating from high school. Justice Page provided scholarship and support until I graduated from my doctoral studies. And what was that, in 2012? So that was a long time investment in not only my professional growth, but Justice Page modeled the best related to servant leadership. He could have easily, as an NFL Hall of Famer, you see all those speeches, they talk about themselves, their car, their houses. He talked about none of that. He talked about the importance of supporting educational outreach for children of color and children living at the margins of society. You can go back and look. That was his Hall of Fame speech. His Hall of Fame speech was about service and served as the launch in 1988 of his Page Education Foundation. And thousands of us, tens of thousands at least by now, have been directly impacted, not just with a scholarship, because beyond the scholarship, there is a requirement of the Page Education Foundation that you go back and volunteer and mentor other young people. So they've created a system of reciprocity that will inspire education for generations to come. So I have nothing but praise to say for Justice Page for his impact on my life, but his impact in Minnesota, society, and the broader world.
I love that. And I love that idea of requiring the students who are receiving the scholarships to go to, like, come on back, give it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's been beautiful to witness, because in the next generation who, like me, a young Artika, college may not seem possible. No one else in your family's gone to college. Not only will they see a role model in Justice Page, they'll see a role model in the Page Education scholars who come to the schools, who tutor them, who serve as a big brother, big sisters. You can't help but to say, then the inspiration is tangible. It's within reach. And that's the beauty of the Page Education Foundation.
Yeah. You know, we've talked not so much here about first generation college goers. I certainly was. It was one of my family had gone to college. Same with my beautiful wife. Same with my niece right now, who is just a little bit away from earning her degree in biomedical engineering. And that whole idea of not only you get the scholarship, not only does somebody help you write the applications, but the idea that you have somebody walking with you as you're going through your undergrad, your graduate degrees and whatnot. I think that's super important, because you can feel college can be overwhelming. And, you know, when you think you're in there alone, that's really tough. How do you think the average person and mom, dad out that's listening to this, can you think of any ways that they might be able to support a young scholar that is kind of feeling like they're on their own?
Yes, I would say just continuing, whether it's, you know, your own child, another child in the community, a child at church, synagogue, temple, wherever you are. Look for that child that's ambitious. Look for that child that's not as ambitious, because they may not understand what options are available. But look for a child near you and close to you. We launched a campaign through Planting People Growing Justice just 2 years ago called the First Educator Campaign. And what that really was about was the reassurance that each and every one of us can serve as an educator in our community by helping to, literally, I was at an event helping to introduce even the possibility of college. So I brought a young person along with me, and then my mentor, who's a retired college president, gave all the reassurance that, yes, you can make it through the admissions process. Of course, I already had said that to the young lady, but my mentor then reaffirmed it and said, okay, and it's all right if you don't go to the most prestigious university. Is there a community college that's nearby? So she was explaining all the different options for academic training. That didn't take a whole, work day. That took 10 minutes. to invest and find out what the young woman needed, what her interests were, and to align the interests with our expertise and the resources that we have. So I oftentimes tell people, start where you are. Oftentimes we wait and say, oh, we have to wait to start an organization. We have to wait to start a movement. We have to wait. No, start with the young people that are near you. Start with the young people that you see on a weekly or daily basis in your neighborhood, and just extend the offer and help them dream. There's a quote from President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who is the first female head of state in the continent of Africa. She was the president of Liberia. And she made this statement that is near and dear to my heart. She said, if your dreams aren't big enough to scare you, they're not big enough. So as caring adults, let's help people dream a little bigger, and especially our young people. And that's the story of my life. I didn't think I'd go to college. So it'd be clear, I didn't think I'd go to law school. And most definitely, I wasn't from an Ivy League law school. I never thought I'd become a law professor. My path to becoming a law professor is unheard of. My path to writing books, academic books for the American Bar Association, writing children's books, writing all these books, it just didn't seem like something that would be on the trajectory of a young girl from Rondo's life who didn't even know she'd go to college. But anything's possible. So I encourage, and I hope that I serve as that ambassador wherever I go for our young people as well. Dream big.
I love that idea. If your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me, you mentioned planting people, growing justice a couple of times. Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Planting people, growing justice literally started in my living room. So my friends learned an important lesson. Watch out. When you start with a complaint, my mantra has always been, when you see a problem, create a solution. They didn't know that they would be a board of a new emerging nonprofit right from my living room. They were complaining about literacy rates. They were complaining about lack of access to books. They were complaining about schools not having adequate resources. The list was going on and on. And then finally, I waited patiently and said, what will you do about it? And they looked to me like, well, what should we do? I was like, perfect answer. Let's get to work. And literally that work started in 2016 in my living room and emerged to a nonprofit literacy and leadership organization that today has donated tens of thousands of books, reached nearly 10,000 students and families related to literacy and leadership development. So what do we have? 2 signature programs. Our Leaders or Readers program, where we focus on building intergenerational reading circles. So we bring the community together to model how to bring forth the learning journey. And then also our writing competition. So once again, when I was saying we publish books, we teach young people how to write their own stories.
Awesome. That's really wonderful. This has been an incredibly inspiring conversation for me, and we need to remember that it all started because we were celebrating Amazing Africa A to Z. And my beautiful wife, her name is Sonia. So tell us the S that we've learned reading Amazing Africa.
S will introduce you to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone is in West Africa. And what I love about Sierra Leone are the beautiful beaches. I mean, sand that just illuminates on the ocean. Sierra Leone was one of the most beautiful places that I've ever visited in my life. So S is that West African country, Sierra Leone.
Awesome. I worked with a woman from Sierra Leone. She brought me back a beautiful dashiki that I don't fit into anymore. I'm really bummed out about it. But she was wonderful. She told me that her dad was the chief of the village, and she had 73 brothers and sisters. I'm like, wow, that must be tough at Christmas getting all those. But she was such a wonderful friend. So yeah, I'm very familiar with her stories about Sierra Leone. Let's tell everybody where they can go to find out more about Amazing Africa A to Z. Also find out more about planting people, growing justice, and most of all, find out more about Dr. Artika Tyner.
You can go to our websites. My personal website is my name, so artikatyner.com. You also can learn more about our nonprofit by going to our website, which is ppgjustice.org. ppgjli.org for Planting People Growing Justice Leadership Institute. And if you're looking for those book recommendations and learning more about some of the books that we publish, you can go to our online bookstore and support 100% of the proceeds from the books that are published by our nonprofit go back to support our Leaders or Readers program and our writing competitions. So that website is ppgjbooks.com. And of course, we're very active on social media. You can join our newsletter, but please continue to find inspiration in reading and help young people discover the joy in reading.
I am so happy I discovered the joy of chatting with you. Will you come back on Reading with Your Kids sometimes?
Of course, I would love to. It's been a pleasure and a privilege.
We've had a great time speaking to the author of Amazing Africa, A to Z. Our guest has been Dr. Artika Tyner. Dr. Artika, thanks so much for being on Reading with Your Kids. Hey, my friends, I have a super idea you are going to love. How about this weekend, turn your backyard cookout into a storybook celebration? Fire up the grill, crack open a few of your favorite picture books, and serve up Big Fork Brand's legendary bacon sausage. Made with nitrate-free bacon and premium pork, it's juicy, smoky, and unforgettable. Top it off with Big Fork's spicy Chicago fire sauce, and you've got a meal as bold as the characters in your favorite bedtime tale. Get 20% off your order using the promo code READ at bigforkbrands.com. That's bigforkbrands.com. Promo code READ to get 20% off, because nothing brings families together like great food, great books, and a whole lot of flavor. Big Fork Brands. Read, grill, repeat. Hey, my friends, you know one of my favorite parts of the day is story time. There's just something magical about snuggling up with your kids, opening a great book, and escaping into an adventure together. And let me tell you, that moment becomes even more magical when you're curled up in the softest, coziest bedding you've ever felt. That's why I'm so excited that CozyEarth.com is supporting Reading with Your Kids. Their bamboo sheets, comforters, and pajamas are unbelievably soft, naturally breathable, and temperature regulating, which means no more sweaty nights or chilly toes. Right now, Cozy Earth is offering Reading with Your Kids listeners an unbelievable and exclusive 41% off their entire site. That's right, you heard me right, 41% off. So go ahead, create your own cozy reading nook, wrap yourself and your kids up in something comfy, grab your favorite bedtime book, and turn story time into the best part of your day. Head on over to CozyEarth.com and use the promo code READ at checkout to save 41%. That's CozyEarth.com, promo code READ. Join us right now for a quick listen back. Justice Alan Page and his daughter, Kamie. Why don't we start with the Justice? Justice Alan, can you talk to us and tell us about Baking Up Love, please?
Well, as we discussed off camera, Baking Up Love is our 5th children's book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a story about a little girl who comes home from school and has plans or expected to be baking with her mother, who is usually home from work by the time she gets home, and her mother's not there. But Grandpa's there, and she's not quite sure that Grandpa's up to the task, but they end up putting the what was it? Cupcakes with yummy gummy worms. They end up putting all that together and have a good time doing it. It's really a story about intergenerational connections, about family, about literacy, about education, and how all that comes together.
Well, that's, we've been celebrating intergenerational friendships here on the podcast since we launched in 2017. I think they're so valuable to kids and also to the older person in the relationship. I think I've said many times on the show, my grandmother was one of my best buds. She would ride in the back of my motorcycle, and we'd go to the WWE wrestling matches together, and we had all sorts of great times. Of course, all my cousins were incredibly jealous of me because I was absolutely her favorite. I don't know if she ever articulated it, but she didn't have to. But those intergenerational friendships are so valuable. And I think because of our, really on the move society, Kamie, I don't think as many kids have a chance to have those relationships as they did when I was a kid.
No, I think you're right. And I think what is nice about this book is it really slows people down. And the school that I'm at, I'm really fortunate to we have grand friend today. So it's not necessarily a grandparent that comes in, but I think what's nice about this book is that at the end of the story, there's a recipe. So you can read it with your grand friend and then bake some cupcakes or bake a cake from the recipe from the book. I think it is so important, not only and you hear it all the time, kids, benefit from being read to, but I think there's so much more benefit to even just interacting with your elders
Absolutely.
in a fun, playful, creative way.
Yeah. I'm curious, Justice Allen, was this story inspired by anything that happened in real life?
Well, all of our books are, in some respects, inspired by our daily lives. I spend time with my grandchildren at every opportunity, and we sometimes bake. We sometimes, just hang out, play games, do whatever. But there are bits and pieces of real life in the book and in all of our books.
Yeah. And Jed, I was just going to add on, at my two kids, so Alan's grandkids, they have a literacy feast at their school. In kindergarten, all the kindergartners pick a story, one of their favorite stories, and they pair it with a food. And so my kids, my son picked The Very Hungry Caterpillar, which this story is based off of loosely. And he and I made cupcakes with little gummy worms on the top. And then my daughter chose the book Mouse Mess, and we made homemade Oreos for the celebration. We brought them to school, and the kids, the kindergartners, sing and recite poetry. And it's just a really great way, again, to celebrate reading and writing, especially at such a young age.
Yeah. I love it. And it's very coincidental. We're recording this on the 29th of January, which is the start of the Lunar New Year. And we hosted international kids in our home, many of them from China. And so last night I was sending greetings to the kids who are now back home living in China. And one of them, Sophia and I were reminiscing about the day that we made homemade dumplings together from scratch. And they were just it took all day long. And the kitchen was absolutely destroyed. But it was such a fun time. Not only were the dumplings delicious, but the time that we spent together, and it's not like we had deep conversations. We were just there together, spending time together, working on something together. And it's so wonderful. Here we are 12, 13 years later, and Sophia and I are both remembering that day and celebrating it.
Creating something tasty and enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Those are special occasions.
Yeah, I agree. Justice Allen, you are a grandfather. I'm not a grandfather yet. I'm hoping to. I'm going to be taking care of my granddog on Friday, and if I have half as much fun as I have with the granddog, with the grandkids, if they come along someday, I'll be very happy. Talk about how much joy you have spending time with your grandkids, please.
Well, let me just say, there is nothing else like it in the world. Now, I'm one of those, I was a father who loved spending time with my children, doing whatever it is that, families do, whether it's reading together, whether it's playing games, just enjoying each other's company. I thought I was in heaven when my children were growing up. Turns out that there is no comparison. As good as it was growing up with my own children, with my grandchildren, I mean, I can't even begin to describe it. And I, quite frankly, wasn't expecting it to be better than growing up with, being with my children. But the first day that our first grandchild showed up, it was like the earth shifted under my feet, and things got, I don't even know how to describe it, exponentially more fun, more warm, more heartwarming. Like I say, it's hard to describe the difference between my children growing up and being a part of my grandchildren's lives as they grow up. And as I say, being a part of my children's lives and they're being a part of mine when they were growing up, I didn't think could possibly have been better.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Now,
you're gonna love it.
I'm thinking that you're right. I'm curious, is part of the added joy of being with grandkids the fact that at the end of the day you get to hand them back to the parents and
I was gonna comment on that. People talk about that. I don't look forward to it.
Okay.
When they leave, I'm sort of in a downer. I just assume they could stay. People talk about at the end of the day, you could send them back. Not my idea of a good time. I just soon have them be there all the time. I mean, they're inspiring. They're fun. They're loving. It literally doesn't get any better.
Can I add, you also, Dad, you do all sorts of things with them. So what's nice is that they all have their different interests and you are able to engage with them in lots of different ways. So I have a nephew who he was in a book club with. They play board games. Some of them swim, so they walk together. I mean, they do all sorts of different things, which is, I think from a parent's perspective, I appreciate, too.
Yeah. It's just beautiful. I am, if this is something that I will be blessed with, I am very much looking forward to it. But Kamie, you said something that I think we should keep in mind. That program at your son's school, where you're having grand friends.
Yeah.
There's a little guy just 2 doors down from my house. A couple of times, his mom's in a pinch, and can you take a look? Can you take Finn for an hour or 2 hours? And we have a great time. And he's real little right now. I think he's only 2, but I'm really hoping that friendship can grow, and perhaps one day he'll look at us as his grand friends.
Yeah, certainly throughout the pandemic, we were so isolated and insular in our own homes. So I'm hoping that the idea of community continues to grow after the pandemic, now that it's, pretty much, it's a little different now. But, we have so many opportunities for grandfriends or friends in our lives, and we don't have to pigeonhole it into grandparent. I think there are lots of people in our communities that we can learn from.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Kamie, your dad was part of founding something that I feel is pretty amazing. It's the Page Educational Foundation. Can you take a minute to tell us a little bit about that and how it's helping the folks in your community?
Sure. So my dad and my mom, Diane, started the foundation in 1988, and the organization or the foundation provides scholars for students of color in Minnesota, scholarships to post-secondary education. So it can be college, graduate school, community college. So it's, there's two aspects to it. There's the scholarship component, but then all of the Page scholars are required to do service to children in the community where they go to school. And so it's really about giving back. And not only do the Page scholars do the service for the students in their community, but those students in the community then benefit as well, because those scholars are really their heroes. They're learning from them and learning from each other. And it's really just the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
It's a version of Grand Friends, if you will.
I was just going to comment on that. It's a wonderful idea. One of the things that's frustrating for me, I had shared with Justice Allen and Kamie that I visited schools for 35 years doing my educational magic show. And I was very disheartened to learn that in many public schools, the idea of the reading buddy or, the fifth grader going down helping the first grader or eighth grader, whatever, that doesn't exist in a lot of the public schools anymore. And I think those older kids are a great resource that schools can tap into. And it's obviously something that you did with your Page scholars. Did you just know that instinctively, that those kids could be a real resource for the kids in the community?
Actually, it was my number 2 daughter who suggested that component of the program. At the time, back in 1988, we came up with the idea of starting the scholarship as a result of my finding out that I was going to be inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Diane and I decided that this would be a good time to use that occasion to actually do something to benefit others, to help other people. And we came home and said, we've come up with this idea of starting a scholarship program. And my number 2 daughter, Georgiana, said, sounds like a great idea, but you could actually build on that. In essence, she was saying, what you plan to do is use my celebrity to influence young children. Mm-hmm. Why not use your scholarship recipients to have that same impact, to become their friends, their heroes, their role models, so that it sort of builds on itself. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I spend a lot of time over the years. I've spent a lot of time in schools and classrooms, talking with young children, just about life, about education, about the value and importance of education, about character. And you get to know young children by being with them. Mm-hmm. And we talked earlier about the intergenerational connection. Who does it benefit? Well, it benefits, the young member of that team. It also benefits the older members. And what we learn is that we have our scholars work with young children, kindergarten through 8th grade, specifically in the area of education. The children our scholars serve benefit. Our scholars grow and develop and benefit in the same way. And, everybody wins, right?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. And I love the fact that in your family is a model for this intergenerational cooperation and friendship. Kamie, you and Kamie are creating beautiful picture books together. Your daughter helped you come up with this great plan. Where did that come from? I know for myself, I have great relationships with my now adult kids, and I started reading with your kids because I know that relationship was built on a foundation of reading together, which grew into baking together and cooking and playing ball and all that. Was it the same in your household?
I don't know that I've ever really thought about how it sort of came together. It just seemed natural.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed to be a natural component of family. And I don't know that I can give a better answer than that. Maybe Kamie's got a perspective from her being, growing up in that environment.
Yeah, no, one of my earliest memories, and the earliest memory, but one of my earliest and most favorite memories is just we had a little library bookmobile that would pull up next to the park near our house. And I just remember always getting in my jammies on the, whatever night that the library bookmobile was coming, and, I'd walk and hold Dad's hand and walk to the library and check out some books. And then we'd go home, and that was our routine for, the week of getting a bunch of books, and then we would read them together. And I think about that, how it carried over through, with my kids. We have a reading family that, almost every night up until when my daughter was maybe in 6th or 7th grade, we would read every night together. It started with board books, and then we moved on to chapter books. And then it turned into, on our drive into school, they were telling Grandpa about the stories we were reading and summarizing them. And I don't know, I just think we've always worked, and it's not work. We've just made it a point. We've been real intentional about making sure those connections are strong.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned the trips to the bookmobile and being one of your earliest memories. One of my earliest memories from my childhood was going to the bookmobile. I kind of miss having bookmobiles today, because it would have been very much fun to have been able to go to the bookmobile with my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember it was almost, the bookmobile was always this warm sort of comfortable place where, books have a certain smell, and the bookmobile always smelled me. I think of bookmobiles, that smell comes back to me, and it's books, right?
Yeah.
And it's talking about magic.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost magic.
Yeah. Yeah. Al, you've lived a full life, and you mentioned that you were a pro football player, and I imagine being out and in front of thousands and thousands of people, it's something people dream about. But just in a little bit of time that you and I have spent together, it seems to me that right now, the time that you're spending with your grandkids and the time you spent with your kids was so much more valuable to you than being out on the football field playing with all that fame.
So I loved every minute of my football playing,
Mm-hmm.
but football was something I did.
Mm-hmm.
Spending time with family and grandchildren and children, that's who I am.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. I think I'm going to ask you in a minute, Alan, if you have a prediction for this year's Super Bowl. But before that, Kamie, you were telling me that Baking Up Love is the 5th book that you and your dad have created together. Are you working on book number 6 or 7 or 8?
Well, we are. Working with my dad, we have a lot of opportunity to discuss, what's next. And we have, I think, a pretty solid draft of book 6 and a real good concept for book 7, which is Alan's idea. He has an old 1906 Buick that he really wants to write about. So we're going to try and make the 1906 Buick the main character maybe, and figure out a way to, or some sort of featured, some storyline with the Buick.
That's one. I'm looking forward. You have an open invitation to come back to celebrate those two books and any other books that come down from your imagination.
Thank you.
Justice Allen, do you have a prediction of this year's Super Bowl?
I learned a long time ago that trying to predict football game winners is like trying to pull straws out of the air or rabbits out of the hat.
Uh-huh.
In fact, it's probably easier to pull a rabbit out of the hat than to predict Super Bowl winners or any other football game winner. Mm-hmm. So I really don't have one.
Okay. All right. And you're right. It is way easier pulling a rabbit out once you know the secret. Kamie, tell us where we can go to find out more about Baking Up Love, find out more about the foundation, and maybe sign up for a newsletter or something to be the first to know when the new books come up.
Yeah. So the books that we write are a fundraiser essentially for the Page Foundation. So all the proceeds that we sell through the Page Foundation's website, which is www.page-ed.org, all of the proceeds go to funding the scholarships that we offer the scholars. And so that's where you would go if you're interested in finding out more about the foundation. And then they have a little bookstore on their website.
Awesome. And if
all else fails, you can go to Amazon.
That's right. Yes. And we also encourage folks to go to their local independent bookstore and request a book.
Absolutely.
Another great thing would be to go to your public library and ask them to put the book on their shelves too. Yes. If there is a young scholar out there that is maybe interested in learning more about the scholarship program, should they also go to that same webpage?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
One last question, Alan. Have you taken, I know that you've been celebrated for all the joy that you brought to people watching you on the football field, the thousands in the stands, the millions watching on TV. But have you taken the time to think about all of the families that you have brought joy to, all those families that have been curled up on a couch reading your book?
You know, I sort of look at the joy they bring to me more than the joy I take to them. And they bring me a great deal of joy. You know, reading together, sharing that time, that's an experience that we all deserve, mm-hmm. that we all benefit from. And I just feel good that Kamie and I have been able to be a part of that process for people who enjoy our books. I should mention, you know, our books are picture books, mm-hmm. and we have an illustrator who has been just phenomenal and has done phenomenal work with the artwork in the books. And so that's something to look forward to also.
Yeah. Well, let's give your illustrator a shout out.
David Geister.
All right, David. Good job. Good job. We've had a really fun time celebrating Baking Up Love. It's the 5th picture book from our guest, Kamie Page, and her dad, Justice Allen Page. My friends, thank you so very much. Please come back to Reading with Your Kids in the future.
Thank you. We will.
We will. Thank you for having us. This has been fun.
Time to thank the people who made this show so wonderful. Dr. Artika Tyner. Please be sure to check out Amazing Africa A to Z. Also want to thank Justice Allen Page and his daughter Kamie. Please be sure to check out Baking Up Love. I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank my team. Most of all, I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. And even more importantly, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for making the world a better place. And you do that every time you read with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next episode of Reading with Your Kids.